Yeah, we're live now. You can start.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host for another edition of VCTV. Welcome back. We are super excited to continue this week's discussions on what's happening in different technologies, industries, and regions around the world. So you as investors can know the latest trends and the opportunities to make the best investments and also have a good education on what's moving and shifting in all of these different areas that are just continuing to shape and grow very rapidly this year here in 2020. And to you, our entrepreneurs, this is the show for you to tune in to hear the latest from investors that you can reach out to and raise from. At the same time, also understand what's going on in their minds, how investors think, how they're looking at things, so you can ready your company, not only in the market, but also if you're raising capital as well. So that's why we do this. We're always happy to hear from you. If you're a startup and you want to be on the show, we host a few different shows specifically for founders. Feel free to reach out at any time. If you're an investor, you want to share your thoughts, you want to open up your mind, let everyone see what's going on, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have you on the show as well. And today we are covering a very exciting topic, another one dear to my heart. Yesterday, we talked a lot about esports, entertainment, AR, VR, and how those worlds have all started to come together and what that means for the next 12 plus months going forward. Traditional sports are all over the place. Esports have started to rise. Gaming itself, as we heard about in various regions around the world, from Asia to the US to Europe and abroad, is definitely taking off and is creating a unique opportunity for both consumers and for brands in terms of where they can be entertained, or where they can be branding, where they can be sponsoring, and how they can be engaged as we see these new economies start to rise up around the virtual and digitized worlds that we're living in. Now, today, we're going to take that into one step further. We're going to look at the edge and the Internet of Things. Now, this plays a role into the future of gaming and the future of entertainment. Edge computing, the future of connectivity, where things are going and how things are being connected. The Internet of Things. Everything is connected. If not, it's going to be. We've been talking about this in the industry for almost 10 plus years now. And the idea of a very connected world, everything seamlessly working together, many sensors, many devices, talking, sharing, and making our lives a little bit better. But are we really here? Is this multi-trillion-dollar economy really ready? Is 5G the next part before we get to edge? Is 6G? Is 7G? What is the next level of connectivity, and where do we go from here? How does that play into some of these industries that we continue to talk about, and new ones as well? Now, before we introduce our guest, before we kick off like we do here in every episode, we want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in. We appreciate you. And again, if you'd like to be on the show, feel free to reach out to myself, the LATOKEN team, or Elena as well. And if you like what you hear, click subscribe. If you have questions, comments during the show, drop them in the chat. I'll do my best to bring them up. And also give us a thumbs up if you like where things are going. And a big thank you to the LATOKEN team for making VCTV possible and bringing it to your screen wherever you may be in the world, along with my co-hosts, Elena and Maria from the LATOKEN team as well, making this all possible today and bringing us all together, again, to your screen. Now, to you, our investors and our panelists, thank you very much for joining. Welcome to the show. Let's go ahead and kick things off as we do traditionally here. A little introduction and background on yourself. Adam, you're the newest guest. I'm going to save you for last. Mark, coming over here. Mark, to you, just a short introduction and a little background on those who may not know you as well.
Well, I hope then they can go online and search a little bit more, but here's the short version. Recovering Microsoft retiree. So for the last 10 years, spending my time writing books about the impact of technology on business success. I actually have a Coursera class out there for people. And as we see over this whole online thing, I said 10 more people than usually taking the class. So that's kind of interesting. But in my main life, I spend most of my time running a couple of companies and investing, mostly in startups in the technology space. I live in the Seattle area. I'm a member of the Washington State IoT Council. So we are helping the governor and the government of the state to be more aware and more friendly of what's happening in the IT space. Other members of the council include companies like Amazon, Microsoft, T-Mobile here in the US. So I'm very deep involved in the impact of the new technologies onto our citizens as well as our businesses in general. Looking forward to have the conversation here today and discuss where this all might be going.
And that's exciting because you kick us off in a very unique way, talking about the city level. So you're on this council and there's a lot happening in various cities around the world. So for those that are first tuning in about the Internet of Things and when this initially kicked off, it was a lot around the wearables and connected devices and quickly moved into this bigger, broader picture of the Internet of Things and our connected world. And many cities have had initiatives to bring that level of connectivity to empower what has been traditionally called a smart city. Let's move away from that term and look at what more, as Mark said, that can do for the citizens, that can do for society, that can do for all of the pieces that make up a city. So Mark, I'm super excited to come back to that. Thank you for sharing that insight as well. And Noble, welcome back to the show. We talked so much about the augmented reality and our virtual worlds that we're moving into yesterday, but I want to bring it back to the Internet of Things and Edge. And before we get into that topic today, a little introduction, a little background on yourself.
Yeah, hi Kyle, hi everybody. My name is Noble Dracone. I'm the managing partner of Dracone Capital Partners. For those who haven't seen me before, I've been raising capital for the last 26 years for both startups and hedge funds. I run a $30 million hedge fund in the commodities industry. And what made my entree back into the tech world was I filed a patent for AR, as Kyle mentioned. But the reality is for us, with the accelerators that we participate in and the clients that we work with, Internet of Things is a full part of the overall scope of intersection of AI, AR, and us being able to communicate with our devices, both on a manufacturer level and on a consumer level. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Kyle.
Awesome. Happy to have you as well. And Wally, same to you, a little intro, a little background.
Yes, thanks, Kyle. So Wally here. I founded my own micro VC called Scale Asia Ventures. It's a unique model that we invest early in the company and provide our unique resources from Asia. So my LPs, including the large corporates and strategic partners from several countries in Asia, like South Korea, like Hong Kong, like Southeast Asia, Singapore. And I'm also quite involved with the later stage fundraising for those of my portfolios as well. So I can cover all the way up to pre-IPO stage. So before becoming an investor, I've spent my past 6 years in the startup entrepreneur world. I start with data scientist at Pebble Watch, which is a first smartwatch company that got acquired by Fitbit. And then I helped the company called Misfit. I went to China and also India, and that one also got acquired. And I spent another few years at a company called DataVisor, which is an AI anti-fraud solution company that I helped them to enter the whole Asian markets. Thanks.
Welcome, and definitely some fun stories in those previous companies you mentioned. I mean, Pebble being one of the first and largest crowdfunding campaigns in the consumer space in general on Kickstarter, followed by also some on Indiegogo. Again, a previous world in the consumer devices space, but then Misfit, also acquired by Fossil. And started by one of the greats in the wearable space, Sunny Vu. And so, Wally, to have that experience, it's definitely playing a very big role into where IoT is going, and excited to dive into that. Adam, last but not least, an old dear friend of my experience in IoT, happy to have you. Little intro and little background as well.
Cool. Thank you, Kyle. So I'm Adam Benzian. I'm dialing in from Seattle. And kind of like Mark, I also am a Microsoft refugee, did my tour over there, and also started a hardware company after Microsoft that was acquired by OtterBox. And after a few years of doing that and learning a lot about hardware, electronics, and I guess other technologies that worked like IoT but were not called IoT. I started co-founded another organization called Hackster.io, which today is the largest hardware community in the world with 1.5 million developers working on anything from machine learnings to FPGAs and all sorts of MCUs and cool stuff. And I'm also an investor in a couple of companies. One of them which I really like is Edge Impulse, which works on TinyML, which really makes components and machine learning for edge devices really makes this kind of magical moments for previously dumb devices and gives them a little bit of a brain, ears, and eyes. And I'm also part of the Washington IoT Council. So living and breathing IoT and tech.
Oh, look at that. We got 2 council members. This is going to be very good. Well, welcome to the show, everybody. Let's go ahead and dive right in. I mean, we all have experience in this and very historical experience. So let's take a step back to take a step forward. Looking at the past 10 years of what IoT was, and I say it in quotes as, again, it started off as wearables, quickly moved into, connected to then the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, to just IoT, and that's what we reference it as now, and just connected devices. Looking back in the past 10 years, what has changed? Where have we come? I mean, to kind of play off what something Adam said, is we went from these, what were supposed to be smart but a little bit dumb devices at the time, right? They were very basic in their communication, to now living a little bit of what was promised 10 years ago of being able to have these smarter devices that are sharing information. But realistically, for our audience out there, what's happened? What's changed in the last 10 years? Where are we today, and kind of what has changed and what hasn't? And we'll go from there. So Wally, why don't you kick us off, and we'll go around the room.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I would say definitely data. Data is very important. That is keep evolving during the past 10 years. So I still remember when I started at Pebble, we launched our first firmware and built up the whole sensors that can collect basically your steps using the accelerometer. And that was really the version 1.0. That's 10 years ago. And we quickly enabled that capability to the developer. And when 5 years later, when we launch our, it should be our second or third version of our hardware plus the firmware, huge progress and updates. We already can do all kinds of the health related, predict your heart rates, predict your activities, etc. That can that as a watch provider, you can actually provide such a lot of information about the user. So that was actually very exciting for me and also for the whole team back then. And looking at now, I mean, it's already 2020. So there's, I mean, definitely I've talking to many entrepreneurs doing a much more efficient hardware that can collect much more data. And also having especially under this AI on edge, there's just so many computation that you can put on the edge to do all the fancy calculations. So now I would say over the 10 years that the hardware becomes smarter and smarter.
That's a really good point. I mean, and increased amounts of data, right? So we've got more data coming in, which is what we always were promised, but we also have that complex computation. So to that, Adam, I see you shaking your head left and right. I mean, same question to you, kind of where have things come and where things are?
Cool. So I agree with Wally. I think I took some notes. As far as the software, cloud computing, that changed a lot and became mainstream and part of every product that we use in a bigger and bigger way. So in some respects, you can say that the electronics are about the same, but it's what the software is doing to them now. But also I would add, there's maybe 4 other things that I've noticed. First, let's even talk about connectivity. Connectivity changed, things like Sigfox, LoRaWAN, created radios that can communicate over long distances in low cost and low power in ways that you couldn't do before. Now we're going to see more low-cost satellite with what Elon Musk is about to activate, I think sometimes this month or next month. So you'll see a lot more going on with connectivity that makes IoT a lot more viable and interesting for remote devices in remote locations for all sorts of scenarios. One more thing that changed is cost. Cost of connected devices has gone down a ton. Think about a company like Espressif and what they've done even for Wi-Fi. Prior to that, you had to create your own PCB and write your own code to build something just to have basic connectivity. And then a company like Espressif shows up and does everything for $5, out of the box in a micronized form factor. And two more things that I kind of noted. Another thing is power consumption. So again, power has always been a problem for things that run on batteries. How much stuff can you do when you consume a ton of power? Not a lot. So things like ARM Cortex-7, for example, that consumes a lot less power than that other, say, Intel processor or other type of MCUs have really changed. Again, what can you do with a low power device? They can do enough and run on batteries for years, even as asset trackers. They can run for 8 years on a single battery. And lastly, of course, again, back to the software, machine learning algorithms that can now teach the hardware and extract information telemetry from the hardware so people can actually build models and run it back on the hardware, have given hardware or edge devices a new life that nobody ever thought you can. And that's, to me, also where everything is going to continue to grow. It's on the machine learning aspect of it. What can you do with the hardware, not how much more hardware can you actually pack into a device. So that's my
if anything, we're gonna see less hardware, right? Probably less of that. I mean, sensor sets, to Wally's background. I mean, you look at some of the devices he's worked on, and some of them that were here at the same time, like the Basis watch, for instance. I mean, those devices had tons of sensors, and some of the most advanced sensors, not only at their time, but even still today, arguably in some cases. But it was the software, right? It wasn't just us as consumers at the time. It was kind of, what could we do? First off, we didn't have the data. And then what could we do with the data when we got it? And why did that matter? And now you're starting to see these devices kind of slow down on the hardware set, to your point, and instead increase on that software component and really break down. I mean, you look at the Apple Watch just as that simple example, what it can do today versus the 4 previous generations. A lot of that is just software, just added software.
Yes.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And Noble, I'm trying not to geek out, again, having all this experience in this space as well. But Noble, I want to come to you, and then Mark, I want to finish out with you on this as well. But Noble, to you, what else are you seeing in this space from your side?
Oh, well, you know what? We've been getting some really interesting clients who've been kind of wanting to work with us in the IoT space. And one of them, former military, has been aggressive in including IoT devices throughout both the manufacturing process as well as in the both mining and the oil fields. And it's been really interesting in how they're retrofitting what are considered classical devices or classical systems, and then using it to do immediate wear and tear for those machines. And so it becomes really an interesting intersection of, because usually these companies have to keep inventory on hand. So it's just-in-time inventory control for them being able to understand what the wear and tear on the devices are. So it's just interesting how the need for this is not always, the discussion is always around the consumer, but the need for this is really driven most aggressively in the manufacturing space, in really understanding both their supply chain cycle as well as the wear and tear on the machines that they're using, and then figuring out ways to communicate. The interesting part is the hardware has far exceeded the capability of the software for quite some time now. The reality is you have to be very creative in how you think these devices can operate. To Wally's point, he's talking about the ability to do heart rate monitoring and monitoring someone's health and the like. But yet, why do we still go to the hospital and they hook us up with a bunch of machines? They could just hand out smartwatches. So it's just interesting that the technology has far, we've outsurpassed our creativity and implementation as well as utilization. And I think that there has to be some kind of intersection on true use case and then for the creatives to kind of step into place. So, the technology is interconnected. My refrigerator is an IoT. It can talk to me, tell me when it needs ice and updates, but I don't use it. And so it's one of those things where we've got these, I think the issue, and so there's a lot of cool things happening, but as we get further in the conversation, I just think that the adoption of it is really at a higher level, and the consumers have yet to catch up fully with what this world looks like.
Yeah, I mean, even on the enterprise, which we're going to get to here in just a second. I mean, this has been a mindset shift for a decade and will continue to be. I gave a long TED talk around this, idea of a painted future where everything was connected and everything worked together. And it sounds great, but we're still not there. And as consumers and as enterprise, we're not sure on how to look at all of this, right? I mean, we have all these devices, but are they talking, are they not? And then there's the issue around sensitivity and data and privacy, which we're going to get to as well, because that's a big topic as investors we need to be conscious of as we look at these companies, but also as entrepreneurs, we need to have that in mind, because that is a big barrier to some of these devices that were and were not successful in this space, which again, we'll come back to. Mark, to you, I want to make sure you get your moment in here as well.
Oh, absolutely. I will take, me, I'll happy to jump in anytime anyway. So
I know, I didn't have
problem
to
at all. I'm not
You
short
were
on
ready.
opinion, not necessarily on wisdom, but opinions for sure. No, Wally, Adam, it's really good. I think the technologies and the consumer space you mentioned, I think there's a completely new world out there with, I think, consumerization of IT, we called it 5 years ago, that really drove miniaturization, reduction of cost of connectivity, but also of devices, the low power devices, I think that I mentioned. There's a huge area that's happening there. What I really like is, though, that Noble mentioned the industrial applications. And I think having a few decades of experience in that space and a little bit of gray hair really helps to see long-term patterns. Because we have seen connectivity of machines in industrial processes since the 90s, but even heavily in the early 2000s. Industrialization of IT, bringing IT in the industrial world was a key driver for the last 20 plus years. And why is that? Connections are really a business critical capability enterprises need. Why? It gives them the data, and I think Noble mentioned that as well. But data itself doesn't really do anything. When I wrote my first book, Agility, about the impact of technology and business success, we looked at the automotive sector. And we said, well, what makes GM and Toyota different? So both of them collected a lot of data. But what really makes them different is what they do with the data. It's driving the insights and then taking insights from the data. So you really have to look at the whole life cycle. It's not only about collecting the data. Yes, that's the first step, and that's getting cheaper, better connected. All of those things are happening. But then what do you actually do with it? And cloud computing provides a lot of capabilities for basically everybody that 20 years ago required a data center. So I think we see huge opportunities by having cloud, edge computing, bringing all of these pieces together. The business benefits, though, are known for decades at this point in time.
Absolutely, and just we've talked about this on previous episodes. Having data it's not that valuable, right? Unless you actually do something with it. And I mean, we're all shaking our heads. We all know it's true. Is the time old tale at this point is data is the new oil. Well, that's great, but if you're not actually doing anything with it, it's not valuable, right? It's very perishable. If anything, it does have a time limit and it's skewed. You got to be able to do something with it and optimize in some way. And Wally, I saw you shaking your head as well around that data set. So let's dive in on the industrial side, because there are a lot of applications. We as consumers can only have so many, but on the enterprise and industrial side, what does this world look like now that we have all this data? Who cares? Are we actually doing something with it? Are there real use cases where this data is being applied as things have shifted from what looks like consumer applications to now more in the enterprise? So Wally, I'll come to you to kick us off.
Cool. Yeah. So the my fund actually focused very much on the enterprise side. So I invest across the from fintech application to healthcare to everything like data driven and machine learning, AI enabled. So actually, one of the companies that are called EdgeWorks, they provide basically a orchestration layer that push the cloud computing to the edge. So they enable the software developers to basically test and run their AI algorithms that they used to run on AWS GCP, push directly to the to any of the processors and the on the edge hardware that you're using, and no matter what container or any basically Docker technologies that you are using, and they also provide a security layer on top of that. So it's actually one of the they're very busy right now because of the whole COVID thing, that a lot of the schools and malls are thinking about reopening. And the camera they have currently do not have basically a smart enough to serve the current COVID environment. So what they do within like 4 or 5 weeks, they come up with a end-to-end solution that can help turn just a thermal camera to become I mean can basically analyze all the basically shoppers and the students' temperature, and also detect their whether they have masks or not. And then more interestingly, they can also quickly push basically a app push onto those people's phones so that they can quickly check in and log in their information, whether they have contacted any suspicious patients before. And then they can actually show the QR code on the camera to scan this instantly. And all of this, they can develop this within like 4 or 5 weeks, and they can push this to the schools, to the healthcare, basically the admins, so that they can actually real-time analyze all those traffics. So yeah, so I found that's a huge. I'm very exciting about their advancement over the past few weeks, but that's the advancement that we can see. That right now we almost bypass the whole supply chain in the traditional camera or thermal camera, I would say, the market, and they can actually bring some very unique product to the market, and they're right now talking directly to all the schools in nationwide. And I think that's actually a trend in the enterprise and industrial perspective, where the developers, because of all the innovations over the past 10 years, the developers and basically the small developers, they can actually develop such a very powerful analytics platform to the big enterprises to use. And it's very nimble, very hard to, very easy to deploy because of all the cloud computing and the data machine learning advancement over the past 10 years.
And Adam, are you seeing the same thing? I mean, you brought up how you've been making some investments in this space, and it sounds like it's another area of interest for you. I mean, with the ML side of things, are you seeing something similar around data and what's happening or not happening as well?
Yeah, so I think it's the same trend. So yeah, so my obsessions and view are really around the machine learning aspect of it, and the hardware that enables this kind of deep learning experiences over, again, low power, low size, and all that. So I would mention 3 companies that one of them I invested in, but the other 2 I didn't, but I love them nonetheless. That are really also doing some interesting stuff and enabling new experiences. So one of them did not invest, big company. It's Ambiq Micro. So it's just for those of you on the call that want to check them out, AMBIQ. Ambiq Micro. So they, for example, enabling this new world of IoT over one of the lowest power solutions that that almost nobody industry can actually reach, and they can turn their solutions, like really almost, if you think about old devices like remote controls, like why are they so dumb? Remote controls, they still have some technology in them. They just don't have the right technology. They can actually do more than just respond to almost basic analog interfaces. So creating actually Micronauts technology, they have low power, they can actually do deep learning and machine learning algorithm on them and create new experiences. That's something that a company like Ambiq Micro can enable. Another one, which is really interesting, is a company called Syntient. Also, let's do the spelling. It's SYNTIENT. TIANT, also similar company that also focuses not on an MCU level, but on the actual voice, something that could be built into an Alexa. And again, I don't have any insider information, but I won't be surprised if this into an Amazon Echo in the future. So they're able also to create, a new processor for deep learning that can run up to 200%, 200 times more efficiently than the current low power MCUs that we see in the world, and run, again, deep learning framework on top of that, something again that we've never seen before. So again, you're getting this new generation of hardware that can actually run deep learning on it out of the box at low power, at micronized size, and that can again changes how you think about the applications you're going to build, because at the end of the day, all these are raw ingredients, and this is the flour and the butter of of developers, and what they're going to cook with it becomes very different. And lastly, the company that on the software side only is Edge Impulse, which I did invest in. So Edge Impulse, what they're saying is, no matter what hardware you have in market today, be it a Sentient or an Ambic, or things from say ST Micro and other more mainstream ARM-based MCUs, they say that they can actually connect with these older sensors and MCUs, extract all the data that they generate, which, by the way, today about 90% of all data that comes out of sensors and different types of edge devices just goes to waste. Nobody knows what to do with it. They can actually extract it, capture it into their studio, and allow you to actually use that data and using all of it, detecting all sorts of complex events that are role-based, and then actually writing models and putting it back on the devices. So they were saying is that it's not even about any particular device, it's about any device that you want to use. We can now take this data, do something with it, run it back on the device, and should you want to connect it to the cloud, yes or no, it's your choice. But that's kind of like the new trend that I see. And later, maybe when you talk about privacy, we can talk about that too, because all these three companies also have a value proposition that aimed at privacy, because what they're also saying is that you don't even have to run things on the cloud anymore, because before all this computational stuff, machine learning and all that had to run somewhere else. Now they're saying we can actually do this locally and keep your information more private and secure should you not want to run it on the cloud. So there's a lot of new trends and a lot of changes enabled by TinyML and other stuff that are changing the way people build products and solutions.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point as well, as just the idea of plug and play, right? The Internet of Things was not supposed to be overly complex either, and especially when it entered the enterprise, and Noble touched on this, it should be plug and go, especially when you're adding that value around the supply chain. It should just be, let's track this part of the process, know how we can make it more efficient, to Mark's point, leverage the data to create and solve a use case. But the issue definitely came aside from the complexity. So now we're seeing plug and play, which I agree is going to be a trend. And if anything, similar to blockchain and other technologies, interoperability is inevitable. If you're not focused on connecting and interweaving, you're going to be very niche, or else you're not going to survive. So pay attention to that, those that are listening. But then let's dive into the security aspect, because you've got what traditionally was just data collection, figure it out, and it goes somewhere and you don't know where, or went onto an application that you didn't know who was having access to that app, right? That's kind of the issue with to the point that was made earlier by Noble of like, why can't we just go into, why do we have to go to the doctors? We should just carry a smart device. Well, no one trusts who has or doesn't have that information where it's being processed. But one of the trends I've seen, and Adam, I'd love to have you kick this off as well, is, from a security standpoint, you've got on the device, processing on the device, storage on the device, on-prem, so on-premise when it comes to the enterprise. You got blockchain that gets thrown in there where it can be private or public and private, bring that up into the conversation. And then you have multiple layers of data security that's happening, and that's changing based on industry as well. So big question to all of you, because I think it's probably one of the most, if you're an investor looking at an entrepreneur building in, you need to have solved for. So security and data privacy, what are you guys seeing in this space? And really, what is the right way or right ways that industries should be looking at this. And Adam, we'll start with you as you kind of touched on it, and then Noble and Mark and Wally.
Cool, great. And again, I'm not an expert on the security part, but I've seen a lot what companies are doing for sure. So I would give 2 examples. So again, the examples I get with say Ambig, Sentient, and Edge Impulse. What they're saying is that they're able to extract data from devices, create a model, an interference, create a model, and then put it back on a device without actually, they need to go to the cloud. It's happening between 2 more closed entities. So that's one model to say, hey, data privacy doesn't always have to go to the cloud. And by the way, that's also, there's a cost in power consumption to go to the cloud, and you need to have connectivity and radios to do that. So that's complicated in itself. But that's one, keeping things on premise. And the other thing is something that Microsoft is doing, for example, with Azure Sphere. Azure Sphere is a new device that came out from the Microsoft. It's the first actually hardware device that came out of the Microsoft Azure team. And that device, it's an MCU with another custom processor that Microsoft created, like a co-processor that had, I believe, 7 layers of security that you can check in or check out, depends on how much do you want to harden a product. That creates almost like the new antivirus for IoT. And you do have to embed this piece of hardware in your design, and then through the Azure Sphere, security services, then you can actually turn on and off different types of security checks that you need. Depends on what you're building. Again, we talk about military applications or medical applications that are really critical. So even a company like Microsoft is putting a ton of money and investment in creating a mainstream product that can be embedded by anybody to create these checks of security and privacy. Well, mostly security, not really privacy. So I think that it's definitely, again, everybody talk about it. It's critical. We haven't had a major problem yet. And I think once we'll have it, it's going to be major. It's not going to be a minor problem. Everybody talk about it, shut down your local power plant or interfere with all sorts of things that are dangerous for humanity and not funny whatsoever. We haven't seen a lot of this happen, at least in the United States, but it could happen. And once it happens, I'm sure it'll be a mad rush of startups and entrepreneurship to fix it. But right now, it feels like everybody talks about it. There are solutions that can solve things, but they haven't kind of become the main piece of the conversation yet. It's still like a side conversation. Oh, we should also have a lot of security.
And Noble, to you, and it shouldn't be a side conversation, but it's good that it kind of is at the moment. That we haven't had too many. We had a few leaks on the consumer side and not much on the enterprise side yet. To your point, Adam, it's probably unfortunately going to happen. But Noble, to you, I mean, same question, continuing the conversation.
Yeah, it's funny because Sentient is actually up the street from our office here in Orange County, and so I've been tracking them for a little while, and I really like the technology. So I'm glad that Adam brought them up. So it intersects on a couple levels. So when you talked about, I was talking about the smartwatch being able to feed to the hospitals, that's a HIPAA issue, right? I think a lot of these issues are really the human being side of it, trying to catch up with the technology and be able to formulate rules, regulations, and laws. Up until now, most people really didn't even have full access to their own medical files, to be honest. You go to the doctor and you don't even know all your history and the data they've been collecting on you analog style, much less how they would do it digitally. I just think that at the end of the day, we have to separate clearly security versus privacy. The security component, I think blockchain needs to play a significant part in how IoT operates, in order for us to really track and manage our control and to really establish the idea of security built in and who's logging in, who's logging out, and being able to track who does that. And I think that's a whole nother conversation on the security component. And it's great to build hardware aspects, but I think the length of that is going to really fall into us coming up with a deep embedded encryption and a lot of these things, particularly with Sentient. Everything is focused on voice control. The whole imagining and why Sentient even exists is they're imagining that no one will be using keyboards, and we're going to eliminate tactile access to most of the things we have, and we'll be using both vocal and AR to drive our world. So that's even another issue of, vocal patterning and being able to copy people's voices. And, so there's such a myriad of security issues that are wide open in the IoT space. The idea that someone can hack your fridge and then access your Wi-Fi, right? It's just it's a bizarre component that we all have to fight. I remember I put in a whole house mesh because of this whole thing going on with COVID, and I'd avoided it for a long time because the only way to access the mesh is through an app that then interacts with the whole house mesh. But then all my IoT devices are on this mesh. So that's a security issue. But then the privacy issue, you run into the HIPAA compliance, you run into whether or not the data that's being collected is valuable enough for you to care, even whether or not they are analyzing it. It's great to even have it on premise, like Adam brought up, but still that runs into the security issues of a device that's basically tracking and watching you in your home. And, obviously it's for your benefit, but it's literally learning and modifying itself for your needs. So, we're on that whole, we've talked about it before, Kyle, we're on that edge of singularity immediately where everything is both computer and analog all at the same time. And I just, my feeling's always the same. Privacy really has to be legislated to some extent because scientists build regardless of whether or not it's important. And it's obvious with the fact that there's a lack of security in the IoT devices all overall is that at some point the human intervention has to step in and start forcing the security necessary to show that this is important.
Absolutely.
Can I just follow up on Noble's comment? I'm glad you mentioned blockchain technology because of course it's close to my heart. Blockchain technology really adds a lot in the trust. A lot of trust in the collaboration of different organizations with each other. I think we have some great examples with BP and their supply chain, or Coca-Cola, where they look at their suppliers and workers' right and making sure there's a lot of compliance there. And in another pitch, my book, The Trust Technology, we are going into much, much more detail on that. I would love to get the discussion a little bit higher. Again, I think you mentioned this as well as governments. What is the general direction for security and privacy? I think the Europeans have driven with GDPR this really forward and making sure that the understanding of data protection is critical. And I think a lot of US organizations that are operating in Europe have embraced it as a global policy anyway. So I think there's definitely some awareness here. Having said that, and I think, Kyle, you mentioned this earlier, it's like, where is the money going? I think I disagree a little bit with it. Our consulting company, Edge, we work a lot with CIOs around the spectrum from a variety of different industries. And especially in the COVID crisis right now, there's so much cutting back in the IT space. Budgets around hardware are slashed dramatically. What's not getting slashed and where actually additional investments are going is all about security, data protection. Huge investments in the enterprises are going in that direction. So I see that as one of the key areas that companies are seeing. So yes, Adam, we haven't seen many big breaches yet. Not talking about Twitter at this point, right? And the cryptocurrency thing a couple of days ago. But one of the reasons is that companies are extremely aware of it, and that's where they're focusing their efforts and their money.
Mm-hmm. Well, we did see a little bit in the auto space. It wasn't on a wide scale, but let's not forget, I mean, we did have the initial test of a few friends, but then also this started a lot of controversy of being able to hack into a self-driving or connected Jeep, right? About 6 years ago, I think it was. I mean, that was something that really happened. And, while voice may be the new interface, which I do believe as well, it's going to be coming at some point, but how big is it is another story. But
it only works if you don't have a German accent. My car doesn't talk to me. Not even my German cars.
No. So let's actually let me finish and then let's get to that. So I mean, this is the hacks. The security issues have come, but now you're bringing up a very good point. Is that with these devices, we talked about data being skewed, interfaces, interaction is also skewed. Frankly, I mean, look, you have any bit of an accent, some of these things don't work for you. Right? We go back to being data as skewed data. guess what? Not everybody has a connected device. So when you look at things, how does that play a role? So to you and Adam, and I guess really for everybody, and Wally, we haven't let you out. We're coming back. Don't worry. I mean, what does this look like on a city level? I mean, you guys are sitting on the council for Seattle and Greater Washington. What does this all have to do if we've got limited connected devices? How do we bring more connectivity into the world? Or is that dangerous right now? Are cities more concerned that people are going to be hacking streetlights and green all the way through, or dumpsters are not going to read correctly because someone wants to just mess with the dumpsters? Like, they're basic concepts, but people like to mess with things to mess with them. I mean, it's to also learn and to fix and improve, but also to test vulnerabilities and see what's there. So I mean, what are you guys seeing on all of this around the city side?
I think one thing is clear, that accessibility and access to the data and the infrastructure becomes critical. It might be as important as some people said, as a human right. If you want to participate in the global economy, even learning, we see outside of city centers, especially in the US, a very big discrepancy of the ability to connect to the global networks. And I think that's something, as I said, China, Korea, even Europe have done a much better job over the last 10 years of bringing everybody into the connectivity sides. I think there is, politically wise, that's a top focus for politicians at this point, especially if you look outside of the metropolitan areas.
Adam, anything to add? If not, Wally, I want to make sure you jump in on this too. I know you're doing some work, and especially your experience between here and Asia, I think will add a lot of context to this. Adam, anything first?
So for what I see is, again, that I agree with everything you guys said. That it feels so fragmented. I feel like that at least there's no one clear direction, or even though it's, say, Mark and I sit on the IoT Council for the state of Washington, it's just what you see is a lot of companies doing a lot of things which are similar, but I don't see like a single movement or a single solution for a smart city or anything that can point out to. It feels like it's what we know about IoT today. It's fragmented, it's big, it's complicated, everything's to be custom made. So that's what I see. It's like still very chaotic in a sense and disorganized. Nothing is packaged in a way that it's just easy to just grab and deploy. It all depends on what do you need, at what scale, at what cost, and your current situation. So that's
that may be just the way the IoT goes for the future, right? When we started this industry 10 years ago, it was very focused, or ideally was trying to be focused. And I think that was what caused some of those initial issues, and also a little bit too much excitement in the wrong way. And now I think you and Mark are bringing up a great point, is like, this is very fragmented, and this is a very big movement. I mean, we brought up blockchain, and we talked a little bit about this, Mark, last week, and how blockchain is playing a role, and artificial intelligence playing a role in so many things. They're underlining technologies, and IoT is becoming an infrastructure, just similar to how Edge is looked at as well. I mean, this isn't just putting a connected fridge or an Alexa device in your home. This is fundamentally changing everything infrastructurally in everything that we do, so that they all can be more efficient. They all can be more connected. This is a data future world that we're looking at, similar to digitization. It's not happening in a day. It's not happening in a decade. It's going to take a long time. But Wally, I apologize. I want to make sure you get a point in as well.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So I think from the Asia's perspective, I mean, I've a very close relationship with South Korea's, basically their research labs before, because when I was doing my PhDs, I was collaborating with South Korea's universities and so some governments. They have actually collected all the activity data, and also since they only have a very few mobile carrier, and they have a lot of the basically government funded research lab jobs to understand about the mobility of the people, and also trying to because most of the population stays in Seoul, so it's very easy for them to have like a very well coverage about the people living in Seoul, and how to, from the urban planning perspective, how to improve some of their for example, their train stations and all those infrastructure plannings. And more interestingly, under this COVID, we actually see that this whole infrastructure they have built to track and analyze those mobile data actually plays a very important role in this in the late February March outbreak in Korea. I mean, they quickly identified basically the chain of basically the activities of those suspects, and be very quickly to identify the basically the risky people, and pushing the notification directly to them, and letting them know like all the details and where they have been to, and broadcast across the community, so that prevent people from going to those hotspots. So I think that's actually amazing, and they've done that in just instantly. They don't need to build anything at all. So I think the whole, I think right now, I mean, if we compare with the US, I mean, it need a lot of work, maybe like 5 years or 10 years work to catch up with what they have achieved over there. And a lot of those infrastructures can benefit a lot especially under this pandemic. But I also see that a lot of if I talk about the convenience of the civilization, people can actually be very convenient to do a lot of things. For example, when they are actually planning on publishing policy rules, they have actually already collected all those data. So when I was doing PhDs, I was actually helping to do all the predictions and modelings around those data. And a lot of the big companies, they also use this to fund where they shall, for example, fund their next headquarter, etc. So those are amazing data infrastructure that the government level they have already built up over the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Which is exciting, and it shows just how important this really is, right? This is so big. It's not just, again, consumer. It's not just a particular enterprise. It's such a global and impactful infrastructure project that changes everything. I mean, the idea of our connected future and our connected lives, not to buzzword out, but I mean, the idea of this and how everything works together to make us more efficient, to drive new economies, to everything that we do, and hopefully improve our quality of life. It's a game changer, but it's just a big movement. And with that being said, gentlemen, we're at the top of the hour and time for the lightning round. I got 2 quick questions for you. First and foremost, 5G. 5G was everything. Keyword was. We're now potentially bypassing it. So we're now on to 6G. Samsung has come out just in the past few days and said, forget 5G, we're focused on 6G. We're already building for it, we're already focused on it. It will bring holographic technology, legitimate holographic technology. It will connect people in different ways. It will bring new experiences. It will revolutionize technology. We heard that about 5G. It's just now here. So the fact that we may or may not have skipped it, where are we? 5G, is it here? Is it real, or are we already past it and we're moving on to the next level of connectivity, whether that's 6, 7, whatever G, or just a bigger picture of Edge? Mark, let me start with you. I see you smirking over there, so you know something I don't. Where are we? 5G, 6G? What's the quick thought?
Well, I think for a lot of people in the world, it would be nice to have at least reliable 3G. So there's this discrepancy of connectivity that we have globally is just dramatic. And I think being able to unlock the human potential by providing reliable connectivity, 3G, 4G, 5G, who cares? At the end of the day, being able to consistently at low cost participate in the global economy will unlock a huge human potential. And I think having said that, yes, higher throughput technologies will create more opportunities. And I think we have seen, like in Africa, for example, landlines never really made it. So, but with the ability to have mobile communication, mobile data, a huge potential was unlocked in the last 20 years. And if you would have talked in 1995, we connected a phone to a mobile PC and said you can do mobile internet, most industry people would say, why the heck would I check my email while on the road or browse this internet thing? Many people can't see that early on, but I think we today know how much connectivity transforms societies, how we work together, how we relate to each other. I mean, come on. This COVID crisis 10 years ago would have been a completely different economic impact than we see today. We can keep businesses running, we can keep collaborating, we can keep learning and sharing. It's a completely new world enabled by the technology that is there. Having said that, again, a lot of people let's don't forget it, do not have access to that technology today, and that's what we have to focus on as well.
Well, it provides infinite opportunity to build on, I think, to your point. And guys, I want to get to closing thoughts here for each of you around this subject and then where everyone can find you. So Wally, let's start with you. Closing thoughts on the future of IoT, where to make investments, where not, what's happening with Edge, just closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you online?
Sure. Yeah, I will start with where they can find me. Basically, I can be reached at LinkedIn and also on Twitter, and you can also check my fund's website, sav.vc. I think we covered a lot of topics today. I mean, I think I try to summarize a few points that I think is very exciting. Definitely pushing the edge to be more smarter and acquire more data and can analyze the data on the edge. That's a big trend, and I'm fully bullish about that and investing around the software piece around that, like cybersecurity, like the orchestrations, DevOps tools, developer tools, etc. And I also agreed that I mean a lot of the advancement in it's on the more on the government level or on a more like bigger society level. So we can definitely, there's something that we can definitely learn from the other countries. And yeah, talking about the 6G, I still remember when I was at Seoul. I mean, all the subways, they covered fully like 4G, and that was like 2 years ago. So those are like a lot of the things that we can also borrow from other countries' experience. Thanks.
Absolutely, and thank you as well. Noble, I want to come to you. Sorry, I know you might have been taking a drink real quick there, but I want to come to you. Quick closing thoughts on the topic as well, and where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so I don't know if you see my name on the screen, but Noble Dracone at LinkedIn.com. You can find me on LinkedIn all the time. It's pretty easy to access me. And then our company is Dracone Capital Partners. So my last name, Capital Partners, and we're always open to new projects and interested in either working with them on our accelerator or investing directly. Just final thoughts on the subject is that it's here. We can't ignore it any longer. We're anticipating it getting here where Internet of Things might happen, but they've been installing it in all of our electric. My meter is a smart meter, and I remember when they installed it 5 or 6 years ago, in which it feeds directly information back to the electric company. So the idea now is for the laws really to catch up with what privacy means. I know that we talked about GDPR and we talked about everyone trying to match that, but realistically, the uniformity still lacks any true regulations here in the United States that makes it simple. I also do believe that there will be probably in the next 5 years an elimination of this kind of ad hoc system you talked about a moment ago of all the IoT being customized all along the process. I believe there will be clear front runners that'll make it simple to do an integration. And, I think Adam talked about a few of them that have the potential to be that. I just think that it can't continue to be this hyper customized solution like you're building your own computer. It can't function that way if we plan for everything to talk and communicate and interact with one another. So I think there will be some clear front runners in the next 5 years.
Absolutely. I see Mark shaking his head. Mark, I'm coming to you next. Closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you?
No, I think just thank you very much for the conversation. You can see, let's try this one. This is work. Oh, I think it's the other way around. Perfect.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah,
you can see it.
Work? Good.
Yeah.
So that's my Twitter handle. Easiest way to follow me. Lots of information there and thinking. I'm retweeting a lot from smart people, so and I don't have to think as much now. I think it's a great conversation. It's going to change the world. We are already in the middle of it, and thanks for putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here as well. Adam, close us out. Last closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you online?
Cool, thanks. You can find me on Twitter. I put my handle at Adam Benzion, or on LinkedIn, Adam Benzion, same thing, if you can remember my last name. Where is it all heading? So in my opinion, on the tech, I think, again, tiny ML, machine learning, low power, and lots of security. That's where it's heading on the tech side. On the business side, if you want to succeed in IoT, you probably need to become a system integrator. And on the 5G front, same like you guys, a lot of information, and I don't want to call it noise because it's real, but it never kind of took off in the way we thought it would. I see it taking off a little bit more in the millimeter wave in manufacturing. So that seemed to have actually real need and real applications, but on the consumer end, it became more of a buzzword than real deployable applications and need. Like Mark said, sometimes if it just works, it doesn't mean that we have to stream movies anywhere we are in the world on a phone. Maybe it's not about that anyhow. So that's my thoughts about 5G. I guess we'll wait and see.
Here we go. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you to your audience for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. We're all online 24/7. Feel free to reach out to us. We've all been in this space for well over 10 years. If not, it's a little bit shorter, a little bit longer. We have all the experience, whether it's on the investing side or the building side. We'd be happy to chat with you, hear what you're building, hear your questions, comments, concerns. Also, if you'd like to be here on VCTV or Startups Lending or Startup Leaders Club, reach out. We'd love to have you as investors or founders. With that being said, stay close and keep an eye on the Internet of Things and where this connected world goes and matures and develops. Think about the things that we talked about today, what to keep in mind when you're looking at companies and when you're building companies as well. Keep also in mind the future of connectivity, 5G, 6G, 3G, whatever it may be. Consistency across the world is what matters, and getting that connectivity to everyone to see where this future really takes us in the coming years and decades ahead. I'm your host for another edition of VCTV. Thank you to Elena, Maria, LATOKEN for bringing VCTV together. Kyle Ellicott here. Everyone have a great day. See you back here tomorrow. Take care.